Shalom, and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of a Shabbat teaching with Rabbi-Cantor Chorny.
I'll start with a question today. What is the most important or meaningful thing that you have ever lost and subsequently found? You lost something and then you found it again. I think, if I remember correctly, there's at least one stuffed animal in our house that has an epic adventure story. Is that right, Yosinella? Where we lost an animal? What's that? That's right, you lost a toy here. And then you found it at your house. And maybe it was just a dream. But if it wasn't a dream, if you'd really lost it, that's such a great question is it really lost if it was at your home all along? Yeah. I don't know. Like a cell phone. Okay. If you really had it in your presence all along, like, where is it? I was thinking about this week because this week I got to go somewhere crazy interesting. I got to go to the hub where the Waymo cars go when they're done driving people around. Now, the reason I had to go there was not a great reason. The reason was that we had a wonderful celebration for Ella's 10th birthday. She read today in honor of her bat mitzvah parsha coming up. Teitze is her parsha. And we gifted her a first ride in a Waymo. For those of you who don't know, that's a driverless vehicle. Has anyone here ever ridden in one? Oh, we have two of courses and lots of people who have never ridden in one. You've been in one now. They're very exciting. They're really fun. They're less pricey than I would have thought, and they're a great adventure. But there's certain things about them that are very strictly impersonal. I'm going to name one thing that's really great and one thing that's a challenge. You don't have to tip any drivers. That's right. So you could talk to the wheel. You can sing in the car. They can't hear you. There are wonderful things about them. One wonderful thing is that, strictly speaking, Waymos make the streets safer for pedestrians. Yes, so Waymos, because human beings are terrible drivers, but more importantly, robots are great drivers because they follow a set of ethical algorithms programmed into them, and they will stop no matter what. And the rate of injury with Waymos is extremely low. Of course, we don't have as many Waymos as other vehicles on the streets, but that's a really wonderful potential part, that these vehicles could make the streets safer for pedestrians to walk on. Something challenging is that if you were, for example, to have a pair of AirPods in your pocket when you went to go ride in a Waymo, and they were to slip out of your pocket, you can't have home base. You know, if it were in the olden days of taxis, which I was used to riding around in New York, you call and the cab company would call the cabbie and they would say, hey, did someone leave something in the back seat? This is a little more complicated. They do have cameras, but they're imperfect. And so I had to wait a day to find out that indeed my item was there. And I was thinking about whether or not my AirPod case that I had left in the car was lost all along, because on my phone, I could see that exactly where my AirPods were. I was actually following them around the city on the Find My Device app. I was watching the Waymo drive around. So that's how I know it's in the Waymo, is that the AirPods are riding around. I didn't have my AirPods. They were not in my possession. They are not a small cost item. They're important to me. And I knew exactly where they were. So what makes an item actually lost? That's what we're going to take a look at today. Take a look at the source sheets in front of you. This is not the first time that we are learning that a Jewish person has a responsibility towards a found object. Lo tirei et shor achecha, o et sev nidachim, vehit alamta mehem, hashev teshivem leachicha. Two statements. If you see your neighbor's ox or their sheep who has gone and wandered off, you cannot hitalem, you cannot ignore it or turn away. What do you have to do? Hashev tishivim le'achicha, a duplicative verb. Some of you may have been in a service this morning in which you heard people refer in Parshat Shoftim to the well-known verse, tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. That's an exact duplication, tzedek, tzedek. But here you have another form of duplication. I'm sure grammarians have a specific term for it, where we have the verb repeated and the second one is meant to emphasize. Everett Fox, who has a beautiful translation of the Bible, I'm not sure if it's on our shelf in this Beit Midrash, would say, you must return, yes, return the item to your neighbor. And it continues, Ve'im lo karov achecha, if your fellow, this person who lost their property, in this case livestock, it does not live near you, they're not near to you, ve'lo yadato, and you don't know who this person is, who this ox or sheep belongs to, v'asafto el toch beitecha, you should bring it to your house, v'haya imecha, it should be with you, ad derosh achicha oto, until your neighbor or your person comes to claim it. And then what should you do? V'hashevoto, you give it back to them. You might have thought, by the way, we're not going to go here today, but you might have thought, once you go and you find a lost sheep and you don't know who it belongs to and you bring it home, partially because we also have in Parshat Teitze a commandment. Ella, what do we say it was called? Bal Sar Chaim. What is that about? Caring for, I'll give you a hint. Meh and moo. What do we have to do? We have to care not just for people, but for your animals also. So you have to take care of animals. You might have thought if you were taking responsibility for caring for animals, that it's yours now. You found an ox. You don't know who it belongs to. It doesn't have a collar that says, Dave the ox or whatever, that says that this belongs to, Shmuel ben Avraham down the street. So you're taking it home. You might have thought it's yours. It's not. Return it. That's teaching too. And then next, V'chein ta'aseh lachamoro, v'chein ta'aseh lesimlato, v'chein ta'aseh lechol avedat achicha, asher tovad mimena, umitzata, lo tucha lehit alem. And you should do the same. What is it? What do they mean, do the same? You should do the same. The same. You got to bring it back. You got to return it. You have to bring it back. You have to do the same with what? With their donkey. You have to do the same. What's a simlato? Their tunic, their garment. And in that day, by the way, I don't know who was running around without a garment, because most people at most had two garments. So you found their garment, you better get it back to them, right? And so too, think about the construction of this, and you can look at the English if it's helpful to you. Not only do you have to do this with an ox and a sheep, you have to do this with a donkey. You have to do this with a tunic, and you have to do it with anything that you might find. What's being conveyed here? Is there a specific list of things you have to return? No. What is there? Anything, as Joey says, it has to be anything. What they're saying is something that is akin to a merism, meaning like when we say you're supposed to teach these words to your children from when you rise up till when you lay down at night, what we really mean is all the time. Same thing. From the donkey to their dress, you got to return an item when you find it, even if you don't know the owner. Not a donkey in a dress, from the donkey to the dress. Okay, so the Bartenura, who famously comments on Mishnah, and this particular Mishnah that we're going to look at is in Bava Metzia, concerning things like lost items, comes along, looks at this verse and says, wait a minute, what exactly do we consider a lost item? Going back to one of my questions, which is like, if your toy was at home all along, if your AirPods are on the Find My iPhone app, then is it really lost? They didn't know from Find My Phone, but you get it. We're extrapolating out. Ezo hi aveda, what is a lost object? Shenikarba she'ena ba'alim yodeim shehisham. You know that, right, the gaze is from the finder. All of this is addressed not to the person who's lost the object, but to who? The finder, the person who finds the object. If you find an object and you know, I mean, Dave the ox is wandering the street. Their owner does not know where they are. There's no Find My Ox app. And so you wind up knowing for sure this is a lost item. And once you know, there's no way their owner knows that Dave's wandering the street outside the pub, right? Or that their clothing was left on the clothesline, blew off it 3 yards over. They don't know where that is. Now it's Aveda. Now it's a lost item. Okay. My teacher, Josh Culp, Rabbi Dr. Josh Culp, I believe, at the conservative yeshiva, has a wonderful English explanation of the Mishnah. Is there somebody who would like to read through for us on this first page and second, the explanation? I saw Joey's hand first. You can keep this microphone out for you.
Okay. If the finder lost time at work that was worth a selah, an amount of, he may not say to the owner, "Give me a selah." Rather, the owner need only pay him the wages of an unemployed laborer. If there was a court of law in that place, the finder may stipulate before them for damages for time lost. If there was no court of law before whom can he stipulate, his comes first. A person who has already found and returned another person's lost object cannot claim all of the wages which he lost while busying himself with the lost object.
Pause there for a second, Joey, please. A person who has already found and returned another person's lost object cannot claim all of the wages which he lost while busying himself with the lost object. Who would a finder be trying to claim money from? There's not some monopoly bank here, right? You don't go to the court and say, "Give me money. I was a hero. I found Dave the ox." Who are they going to ask for money from?
He's going to get money from the person whose object it was.
From the person whose object that was. That sounds a lot like ransom. So this is where we're dancing around. Joey, please continue with the explanation.
Since the owner of the animal may not have wanted someone to return his animal if he would have to pay such a large sum of money, he's not obligated to pay.
Okay, so someone paint me a scenario. What's something that you wouldn't care if you lost? What wouldn't you mind if you lost? Garbage. Okay, great. Yeah,
Or
something you were done
for my
using.
glasses, 'cause I have a million of those.
Coat that you don't really care too much about.
An old coat. The coat doesn't have a name. There's no preciousness to it. You've lost this coat and you don't care that much about it. But somebody finds this coat on the back of a bench on Ziering Family Field, and they spend 8 hours trying to find the owner of this coat. They come knocking on your door, Alan, and they say, "Alan, I spent 8 hours and figured out through sleuthing that this is your coat." Now, generally speaking, I make $112 an hour as an engineer. So you multiply that by 8, those are the lost wages for the day. So it's about $1,000 more or less. That's what I expect from you, right? What this explanation of the Mishnah says is the owner, first and foremost, if they knew that it was that much money, may not have wanted it. To clarify, if the person comes back and says, "Would you like this coat? I found it," Alan might say, "Sure. I'll keep it around when I need to lend a coat or if I need one and my other coat isn't available." And it's not that he doesn't want it. It's that it's not worth that big sum of money. Great. Okay, Joey, keep going.
All that the finder can claim is the animal wage that an unemployed laborer would accept to have some work to do for the day.
Okay, but we got to have some protections for the finder too. So if a finder goes out of their way, if they take these laws very seriously and they say, "I found a lost object," what does the Torah say? What does the Mishnah say? What does Halakha say? It's my job to get this back. The finder doesn't know whether the object is precious to the person or not. So they have spent some time going to look, and perhaps they deserve us something. What can they claim from the Baal, from the owner of the item? They can claim an hourly wage at the very, very lowest rate. So they could say, $50 would be nice for having gone to so much trouble for hours and hours of returning this to you. Rosa, did you have a thought?
As my family members have reminded me, if I find something and it's not If I find something and it's not mine, it's not uncommon that the person who lost it is going to backtrack their steps to try to see where they lost it. And my family says, maybe you should just leave it because they may come looking for it.
Yeah.
And
Great. Rosa, you're anticipating a great teaching that's about to come. Hold that thought. It is coming. For now, we're going to presume as a group. Here, Becky, if you could take that and put it on the table for a moment. For now, we're going to presume that it was a good thing that the finder went to go find this object. It just may not have been precious, but hold that thought, Rosa. We're going to come back to that. Joey, will you keep going to the however, if before he begins to deal?
However, before he begins to deal with the lost animal, the finder makes a stipulation in front of a court that if he should lose time at work while returning the animal, that he would recover the loss, then the owner must pay him.
Okay, so if someone goes to the court, right, I'm going to give you a different example. Maybe those were my backup AirPods, okay? But someone finds those AirPods. They know it's maybe a couple $100 item or something. They don't know if I got it used or new. They see it that it's an expensive item. They go to the police station nearby, the stand-in for the court in this case, and they say, listen, I would be happy to go to the lengths to give this back to the person who this belongs to. I'll go find them and bring it back to them. But I need you, the police, to tell me that if I'm going to go to those lengths, that you're going to guarantee me some money, because I take this seriously, but I might lose some money for the day. This is a different society. Okay, we're not talking about late stage capitalism. We're talking about a very different village mentality and people looking out for each other. So you see the grappling here. Well, but maybe the court can offer some protections for the person who's going out there and taking this rule so seriously. Joey, will you read us the last two sentences, including the parentheses, please?
Ostensibly, if the loss of work was greater than the worth of the animal, the court would not have agreed to such a condition.
Great.
If there is no court in front of which to make such a stipulation, his own work takes precedent over the loss of others.
Okay, so his own work takes precedent over the loss of others. Who's the his?
The finder.
The finder, that's right. His own work takes precedent over the loss of others. In other words, that ultimately the Mishnah that Josh Culp is commenting on is coming along to say, yes, the Torah is very serious about lost items, but there's a value tension at play. On one side of the scale, people's lost items and our job in society to return those items to them. On the other side of the scale, that the work of finding an object and returning it to the owner comes at a cost. It's not a small thing. It took a solid 2.5 hours out of my day to get my own AirPods. Can you imagine if I asked one of my parents, let's say, one of whom is retired and lives in Culver City, but like that's their time and their day. Had I asked them to go with this QR code and claim my AirPods case, like they would have been right to say that was a good chunk of my day I spent going to recover your item. And they might have said, I don't have time today to do that. And that would have been fair, right? And we know all of these things innately, but these are the rules being put into place in society. I have a couple other things on this back side of the front page here, page 2. First of all, I want to show you that this is not the first time we're seeing this rule. Often laws and rules that we see in Devarim already appeared in Shemot or in Vayikra. In this case, in Shemot, you see that the quote, Ki tifgash shor oivecha o chamaro to'eh hashev teshivenu lo. If you come upon your enemy's ox or donkey, and it's obviously lost, it's wandering, you shall surely return it to them. You should return it to them. What's different about this teaching than the teaching in Devarim? Significant difference. There is an enemy in question. Interestingly, in this case, the stronger or the intensified case is the one in Shemot. Not only are you responsible, according to Devarim, for returning the ox or the sheep or the donkey or the tunic of your neighbor, you are also responsible, according to Shemot, to do so for your enemy. We're not going to delve very deeply into that, but I think it's an important expansion upon this rule. Because, again, if you try to read one into the other, you'll understand that when you see a lost object, whether it's clothing or whether it is, we call it livestock, the whole point is that you don't know who it belongs to at first. This is much easier if there's a name tag on the item, and then you can make a decision. How close do they live? How long will it take me to bring this to them? I already know whose it is. I know what the consequences may be. I might even know how wealthy the person is and how much money I can ask of them. Maybe they're a 2-hour ride from here, but maybe they're a great count, or they own a lot of property and they would give me a lot of money. The teaching in Shemot says, you don't just get to base this on whether or not you like the person that this belongs to. You've got to give it back to anyone. I see 2 hands. We'll start with Joey.
Okay. Yeah, there's an example of sometime when I found something, I got it back to its rightful owner. This happened in my condo building a few months ago, where I was breaking down a large mountain of shoe boxes by the recycling bins, and in one of them there was an envelope full of $5,000 in cash.
Holy moly. Yeah. Wow.
And so I called so I contacted the HOA people in my building to get them back to get back to its rightful owners. And so they reviewed the security camera footage and they looked at a receipt and that's how they got to their unit.
Wow.
And so then the couple thanked me by giving me a big bottle of whiskey. I don't drink, so I gave it to my brother.
Big bottle of whiskey, thankful for that $5,000 back. That's amazing. Yeah.
Were you afraid to tell them, I don't drink, thank you, but I don't drink? Were you afraid to tell them that?
I wasn't afraid. I was polite.
Yeah. All right. Pass it over to
then,
Becky. Very good. Oh, you had another story?
I saw them today as I was going to my car drive here, and they have a 5-week-old baby now.
Oh, that's a good end to that story. Okay, so you got this back to them. And by the way, what a great example of something that is unlikely to have identifiers on it, right? An envelope full of cash is complicated. Yeah.
So I just wanted to point out, given what we read, what your daughter read, really, that if you find your enemy's ox, you have to return it. But if you take your enemy's woman, you can marry her and, 30 days after you grab her, right? Just
an observation.
Worth a lot more.
Right. So as we've seen in the news a lot lately, war is complicated. And in the particular example in Shemot, we're not talking about being at war with your enemy. It's kind of an interesting idea or notion. And what's particularly interesting about that is that in the context of the Torah, both someone's wife and someone's ox are considered property. And so we're talking about huge distinctions, and there's a lot more to be said on that. It's not just a pat observation, but there's some real truth behind that too. What are the rules around that? And perhaps that has to do with the fact that there's a potential for acquiescence. There's a potential for that to be a relational moment. It's not just taking your enemy's wife. It's also about being in, like, what do you do if you find, are you allowed to start a new home, a new family, et cetera, with someone, which is very different than just claiming an object and saying that's mine now, claiming an envelope of cash. But there's a lot to be picked apart there without apologetics. Yeah.
One thing, just going back to the previous little passage here,
Of course.
the duality of justice in this is kind of striking to me, that we're serving our neighbors. That's the entire undergirding of returning, their goods, is doing unto others as we would have others do unto you, but also the protection there of even relevant now and what it looks like to set boundaries. I think this is actually pretty advanced emotional navigating here to say, I want to serve my neighbor, but I also have to, as it says in the last line here, my work has to take some precedence.
I think that's right. Yeah.
Just wanted to kind of point that out. That
absolutely. I think of that as, I think of some conversations I would consider so socially incongruous with the context that we live in, like rules about whether or not you can claim an enemy's wife as your wife now, because we don't think about wives or husbands as matters of property at this point, and the whole category of women in the Mishnah and in the Talmud is really no longer an applicable category, because we thought of women, slaves, and children having the same requirements and non-requirements in many cases. So some of that doesn't work at all. Some is deeply what we call pre-reflective. It's sort of a precursor to some of the social mores that we see playing out in most advanced societies, and hopefully is what's at play when we talk about Israel being a bastion of democracy and moral fortitude, and also Jewish communities being bastions of moral fortitude. It's very, very important that we see these values represented at play. So, it's easy to talk about these things in abstract. The question is, for me, to play off of this, did that really play out? Often when rules have to be put on the books, it's because people wouldn't have otherwise abided. Is that the past tense? Abided by them. And that would be my number one concern. A question back to the text is, does that have to be said because it is so hard to consider both your enemy or your neighbor's concerns and your own? That's really complicated. Yeah.
But I think it's a good question, something to delve into, and just, the treatment of us and how it expands into, again, going into the next piece about even to your enemies, you shall. Shall's a very strong word.
That's right.
And how responsibility is significant.
Right. The responsibility is significant, and knowing that there is responsibility both to the self and to the other, and to hold those things in tension. You're right. It does seem so forward because we're still grappling with the importance of that now. Looking ahead a little bit on that page to a couple of other rules, the Shulchan Aruch, which is the 16th century code of law that is the primary pre-Mishnah Torah Sephardic code of law with a gloss on it by the Ramah, the Reb Moshe Isserles. The Shulchan Aruch has a subsection, has 4 subsections, one of which is called Choshen Mishpat. And in the Shulchan Aruch, we see Rosa's thought on the page. So Baruch Shekivant. The Shulchan Aruch says that if it looks like an item was placed somewhere on purpose, you should not pick it up and try to return it. Now, one reason why you might need that rule is because of what Rosa said, which is, what if somebody comes back to look for their item? But based on the previous teaching, the explanation of the Mishnah in English, what's another reason? It's a little Socratic, but what's another reason why someone has to be told, you can't just see this and say, oh, look, it's a book, it must be lost, I'll go find its owner. Why might you not be able to do that? I'll give you a hint. It has to do with money. You want to take it, Stab?
Maybe you have to leave it for someone who has the time to go in.
Oh, interesting. Maybe you have to leave it for someone who has the time for it. This is like my grandfather who would say, don't you dare return your shopping cart, right? Because if you return your shopping cart, that's someone's job. And if you return it, then they're not going to have a job. Though he was very serious about this. Maybe. I think, let me stop with the Socratic question and instead just say what I think is happening here is I think there's a concern that someone would say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to the beach with a metal detector, so to speak, but I'm going to do that in other contexts too. I'm going to go out looking for objects that people may have left somewhere. Maybe they left it there on purpose, but then I'm going to claim that I found a lost item and spent my time finding that lost item and say, here, give me some money because I found your lost item, right? Because that's what our codes of law say that we can do. But the Shulchan Aruch specifies you can't just go out there looking for lost objects that you can go and return. I think that the metal detector on the beach is actually an apt example of that. Like, are you allowed to go out there looking for things? You might argue that's wonderful because it's a place where others aren't looking, and you might be able to do the duty of returning a lost object. But if the purpose is to go out there and make money for yourself, I don't think so. That's my take. A few last teachings on the bottom of the page. If you find a wallet on Shabbat or any other item that should not be moved on Shabbat, the Shulchan Aruch says to leave it where you found it, even though someone else may take it. What are the values at play? You're supposed to return lost objects, but Motzah, but Shabbat. What about the items you're not supposed to touch or deal with on Shabbat? I think that, the idea is that there's money in it, and it falls into a category that we wouldn't normally touch, deal with, or move on Shabbat, that you shouldn't move it. Now, this only works on one condition. What's the condition? You have to imagine everybody in the world is following the same rules you are, right?
There's only one exception, and that's if we're in an error, in which case we can pick up the
Great question. So Brian brings up this idea, what if we're in an Eruv? You still have the prohibition of not touching muksa in an Eruv, so it still might be an issue of muksa. I think the concern that's at play is whether or not everyone is abiding by those rules. This works if you know that if you leave that wallet there, nobody's going to come and pick up and move that wallet because it's Shabbat. No one's going to touch it. Right? Think about that for a second. Here in this synagogue building where people take not moving around cell phones and electronic devices, wallets full of money, other things that we consider the category we don't deal with on Shabbat, I think it's pretty safe to say that you can assume that most people in our building, apart from our maintenance staff, would not come by and pick up and move something because we wouldn't wind up dealing with it. I certainly wouldn't. If I found a phone in the building on Shabbat, I'd report it to security, but I wouldn't go picking it up, putting it in my pocket and dealing with it. Take that to the extreme. If you're in a village, a society, a group of people where no one's touching it, you can leave the wallet right there because no one's touching a wallet on Shabbat. So you have to understand that this is like in the context of a certain idealism of practice. 3 last teachings, and then we're going to close up our teaching and move to Mariv. On page 3, the first 2 boxes are the same teaching from the Toldot Yaakov Yosef. These next 2 teachings are brought to me by Rabbi Dr. Aaron Lieb Smokler, one of Rabbi Klickfeld's chavruta from the Hartman Institute program when he did a few years in Israel, and whom I've learned a great deal from, just not personally, I've learned from her writings. She brings this teaching from the Toldot Yaakov Yosef. Both of these teachings are from the 19th century. The first here is, and you will want to ignore them, but return them you must. It was not for nothing that they came into your awareness, like that they were shown to you. You have a stake in the matter. The hashev in that verse, do you own teshuvah, repentance, first for wanting to avoid them, and then teshivem, return them in teshuvah back into the circle of your life and your community. Teaching number 1. What is that first hashev teshivem? It's you're about to walk by a lost object and you think to yourself, oh, that's probably someone's cell phone. I don't have the time of the day to deal with this right now. If I walk by, I'm sure someone will find a way to get it. Hashev, go back to Shivim, return it to them. And a triple meaning, do teshuvah for not having wanted to go to the lengths to return this. By the way, particularly if it probably belonged to your enemy. Okay? So he sees this as a spiritual discourse. Hashev, go back on that instinct that you have not to help out someone else who might need to be helped. Let's skip that second paragraph because we don't have quite enough time to get into it. Go to the 3rd box on the page from the Sfat Emet, a Hasidic teaching that also was brought by Rabbi Smokler. When a person habituates himself such that he cannot ignore his friend's lost or his friend who is lost, whether it be a physical or a spiritual loss, then he can truly return to him what was missing and elevate it. But there is one step more. Such an individual, so skilled at seeing what is lost, then becomes adept at seeing the losses within himself. Then he may truly be redeemed. She continues herself, these laws known as Hashavat Avedah call on us to take responsibility for the possessions of other people. The human instinct is to avoid, lehit alem, that's the verb that's used in the verse in the Torah, to not see what is in front of us, to not view other people's stuff as having a claim on us. So 3 times over, the Torah warns against this indifference and prescribes active involvement. To go back to the Sfat Emet for a moment to close the teaching for today, the Sfat Emet says this kind of attunement to other people's lost items and other people's lostness, right? He even extends it to, do you see a person who is lost? Help them return to themselves, right? That is his elevated level. That I could unpack for another hour. But to hold on that thought for a minute, he says to attune yourself to lost objects in the world is to be attuned to lostness and everything around you on 3 planes. First of all, that you're walking through the world and that if you see an object plainly, you're going to think, who does that belong to? And should I take the time to do that? That's level 1. Level 2 is to look at other people in the world and to look for their lostness, and not just look for objects being lost, but to see lostness as something that's a human experience. And that's something that I think that we see in radical welcoming in communities. You see someone who looks lost, find a way to make them feel a little less lost. And the opposite of feeling lost is feeling belonging. That's the job of the community. Finally, and this is so appropriate for the season of Elul, presumably this was taught originally during Elul by the Sfat Emet, because Parshat Ki Teitze is an Elul seasonal parsha. You should also be attuned to lostness in yourself. If you're attuned to lost items on the street, then you're going to notice in yourself those lacuna, those gaps, those absences, those lostnesses, and you'll see it in yourself and you'll think, wow, like I'm really out of place here. And it could pertain to any part of your life. You can feel lost morally. You can feel lost in love. You can feel lost in self-identity. You can feel lost on so many big levels. And ideally, if you're living in a society where everyone is attuned to a sense of lostness, then everyone is doing that dual work at any given time, looking for lostness in themselves and looking out for a sense of lostness in other people as well. That's what I wish for Elul, is that you find yourself tuning in to that lostness in other people and also in yourselves.
You've been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast website or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information on Temple Beth Am, Los Angeles, please visit www.tbala.org.